started working a lot in the IT space as well. Though there's, and when we talk about apprenticeship, we really, there's certain elements that make a quality program, but really what makes apprenticeship great for business is that it's flexible. So you can customize it so it meets the training needs really of your company and your employees. If we can go to the next slide, Lisa. Thank you. When we talk about apprenticeships, there's 5 elements that we really talk about making up a high quality apprenticeship program. So you can see those on the screen in front of you. Really having an apprenticeship program is going to put you in the driver's seat to develop your workforce. The current average range for an apprentice is 25 to 34. So I think we think a lot of times, you know, people are going straight into their apprenticeship program. We're finding that they're not, right? They're doing some exploration. They're finding what works for them or what doesn't work for them. And then typically it's that 25 to 34-year-olds who are entering into apprenticeship programs. But we're also working to develop pre-apprenticeships and youth apprenticeships. So when you think of pipeline development for your workforce, that's something to keep in mind. And really the goal is to help students identify earlier on kind of what their interests are so they can make more informed decisions and so they can be better prepared as they're exiting high school. The other thing that we're trying to do, particularly in the space of youth apprenticeship, is really linking that training to college credits, concurrent enrollment, so that they can also be on both an apprenticeship track and a degree track at the same time. When we talk about apprenticeships, we get a lot of people will interchange internship and apprenticeship. And so really in terms of that high quality apprenticeship, to kind of contrast some of the differences with internships, internships really are more short term. You're typically 1 to 3 months. Apprenticeships are longer term. So usually the minimum period of time for an apprenticeship program is 1 year, and they can go up to 5 years depending on the skill level needed of a specific occupation. Apprenticeship programs are generally a lot more structured. You know, there's a training plan that focuses on mastering really specific skill sets that you need for your employees to fill your openings in your organizations. Internships generally aren't quite that structured, and really the idea is more of giving some work experience to a student. Mentorship is really, in my mind, what makes apprenticeship a really great thing for a company. Apprentices are receiving individualized training with an experienced mentor that supports them through their apprenticeship period. The great thing about that is that somebody who can help acclimate that individual to your company culture, which is really important oftentimes for long-term success for an employee. Internships can include mentorships, but don't always include that. Apprenticeships are paid experiences, so generally you are hiring a full-time employee, and so there is pay associated with that. Internships are typically unpaid, and there really is not necessarily an expectation of employment on the part of the intern. Apprenticeships are leading to industry recognized credentials. Internships, again, are more about work experience rather than credentialing. And then college credits, both of those can lead to college credit, but apprenticeships in a lot of cases are leading to degrees with little or no debt, just because of the way the programs are structured. Many of our institutions, their apprenticeship programs have half-price tuition, and of course there's opportunities for funding as well, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So kind of our contrasting like buzz phrase is Internships are a try before you buy model, and apprenticeships are a train to retain model. So it's just a little bit, apprenticeship is a little bit more of a longer term commitment that you're making to build your workforce, rather than somebody coming in and just learning about the type of work a company does. Lisa, if we can go to the next slide. So as we've had companies participate in apprenticeships, both locally and across the United States, you know, of course, everybody wants to know, hey, if I'm going to do this, what's the return on my putting my time and energy and resources into developing an apprenticeship? And this is kind of some of the top benefits that we get when we talk with employers. Most importantly, you're building a skilled workforce as part of an apprenticeship program. They're going to learn, again, your company's best practices. They're going to learn about the culture, your company culture, which is going to help them have a better fit within your teams, and also learning your specific processes. There is a improved productivity and profitability. If you think about kind of traditional training, where I might go to school for a couple years and then I'm going to enter into your workplace, I'm going to now need to learn how to take what I learned in school and now apply that on the job. And so it's going to take me some time before I get up to full productivity. Whereas with your apprentices, they're learning stuff in school and then they're turning around and applying it on the job, so that time to become a more productive, or to be a productive employee, is reduced with apprenticeship. We are finding that there is reduced turnover with apprenticeship, which in turn reduces your recruiting costs. What we find is that employees feel like when you're investing time in both their education and helping them to develop out a career path, that it's building loyalty and reducing turnover for employers that are using these apprenticeship programs. And then, of course, the training's customizable. So, you know, you can be flexible in how you provide training both on the job and in the classroom. So we see lots of different models, and in terms of, you know, companies doing most of the training right up front, most of the classroom instruction right up front, or that being spaced out through the entire length of a program. So you can really tailor that to what makes sense for your company and for your careers. And similarly, when we talk about reduced turnover, retention rates are at about 94% of apprentices that continue to work with their employer after they complete an apprenticeship. So there is, I hear a lot of concerns about, gosh, what if I invest, you know, some time in training and then they turn around and leave? And while that does happen sometimes, we're finding that that's not the typical route an apprentice takes after they complete their training. And also, apprenticeship is really a great way to create diversity within your workforce. So we're finding that it's a good strategy to help prepare underrepresented populations for your employment opportunities. So we've worked with a lot of companies, and we've found success for these different populations as they've used apprenticeship, again, to build that fit within the company and to provide mentorship for individuals. It also gives you an opportunity to access Department of Workforce Services for your recruiting efforts as well, which can help diversify your apprentice candidates. We're finding, of course, that right now we have a lot of individuals that are looking to change industries. And so apprenticeship can be a good opportunity if your business has a need for employees to take people from other industries and really help develop in them that skill set that they need to be successful with your company. And then the overall return on investment really is going to be dependent on how much you're willing to put into the company or into your apprenticeship program. But we did find, they did a study, and the Institute of Workplace Skills and Innovation said that employers can earn up to a 36% return on their investment in apprenticeship training, which really is higher than any other investment that you can earn on your capital, and more than the 10% that's typical among the S&P 500 firms. So that's just some of the statistics that we're advertising. Other companies have said that they're getting about, for every dollar they're putting into their program, they're getting about $1.50 return on their investment in terms of increased productivity, reduced waste, and greater frontline innovation. When you think about implementing an apprenticeship program, some strategies you can consider is really just implementing that as your workforce development and recruitment strategy for your workforce, and do that as you're building out your 5- and 10-year staffing and recruiting plans. You can provide apprenticeship opportunities for both your incumbent workers to skill them up. So maybe you want to take your entry-level workers that are working well for you, they fit well in your company, that have some potential. You can use that to upskill those employees into your more skilled positions, and then focus your recruitment efforts on those lower skilled opportunities that would create. And then you can also take a portion of your existing kind of education reimbursement funding that you provide and redirect them towards apprenticeship for new employees. So the nice thing about that is sometimes when you're providing those education reimbursements, that training may or may not apply to your job. If you're using some of that money for an apprenticeship program, that training that employee receives is definitely benefiting them and your company. That said, of course, we know that we're in kind of a different time with COVID-19, and a lot of times when things get tight, that those programs are kind of, those educational programs are kind of what has to be, you know, cut. So I do want to talk about some grants that we have in our state that might be able to help support you if you are interested in starting an apprenticeship program. Lisa, if you don't mind jumping to the next slide. So the first grant we have is Workforce Services grant that we received for apprenticeship. That is the grant that I manage. For this particular grant, your actual apprentices would need to be eligible. Those eligible individuals are at least 16 years of age and are eligible to work in the United States. And then we're really looking at kind of a wide spectrum of people. They can be unemployed, they can be underemployed, or they could already be working for your company and looking to enter into your apprenticeship program to move up, to reskill and kind of move up. For individuals that are eligible, then we can assist them with the cost of their training. So if they're going to classroom training, they have to pay tuition or books. We can help them with things they need for work. If they need specific tools or uniform type stuff to work in their positions. And then we can also, when your apprentice is eligible, we can assist you as the employer with what we call on-the-job training funds. What those funds do is provide a 50% reimbursement of the apprentice's wages up to 6 months, up to $4,000, to help kind of offset some of the additional costs that comes with the time you're going to spend training that person on the job. The other thing with this grant that's important to know is it's for new apprentices. So if you are interested in your apprentices taking advantage of this, particularly with on-the-job training funds, just make sure that before you accept them into the program, that you have them apply for this grant. Lisa, can we move to the next slide? We also have several other grants happening in our state. Weber State has received a grant from the Department of Labor as well. This is to support apprenticeships in IT and IT related fields. So IT positions, they don't necessarily have to be in an IT company. Even though Weber State received the grant, the grant does span the state. So people can access that with other schools aside from just Weber State. They have partnered with a group called Apprenti, who acts as kind of the sponsor for companies who are wanting to take advantage of this. And so in that case, they're going to manage all the details with the Department of Labor on behalf of the employer. And Pat's going to talk about Department of Labor in just a second. This grant also includes on-the-job training funds for smaller employers that have less than 50 employees. So there is some funding they have for employers as part of that grant as well. In addition, Southern Utah University also received a grant, and theirs is focused for cybersecurity, for clean energy and advanced manufacturing. And theirs was actually a multi-state grant. It was just recently awarded, so they're still kind of working on building that out and how it will, the details for accepting apprentices, but they are open to working with additional employers as well. So that is an opportunity for companies with the right fit. So just to kind of some things to think about is if, you're having trouble recruiting a workforce with the right skills you need, if you're having a hard time retaining talent, if you want to diversify your talent pool, or if you want to develop a program that trains and educates your employees to specific needs, really apprenticeship might be a good fit for you. So those are all things to consider. Most of our funding in the state right now is around registered programs. Lisa, if you wouldn't mind just flipping to the next slide. So Pat Miller is our representative for registered apprenticeships within the state. She works for the Office of Apprenticeship, and she is your expert for all things registered apprenticeship. Lisa, can you put up my contact at the next slide? Just before I transition over to Pat and take a second, if you have questions for me, just so this is my contact information. If you have questions about any funding or grant that we have available in our state, you're always welcome to direct contact me. Darren is a good resource as well. Him and I work together all the time. So you're also welcome to reach out to Darren, kind of whatever your comfort level is. But before we talk more about what registered apprenticeship is and how that works in Utah, does anybody have any questions for me? Oh, look, there's all these people on the call. I was just pretending I was talking to the three of you on this side. Okay, well, if you...
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So when somebody does the OJT funds and they're there, is there a requirement of how long they stay? If they decide they don't like it at that company and they leave, is there a payback? Or on the other hand, if they don't work out and a company needs to choose to part ways with them, how does that work?
Right, that's a good question. So there is no like penalty per se. So how our reimbursement works is you pay out the wages, your apprentice brings us their check stub, and then we send a check to you as the employer for half of those wages. If at any time your employee doesn't work out, either party, there is no, those wages we don't recoup, we don't go after those funds from either party. We've just reimbursed for the hours they've worked, so there was still training that occurred during that time. So it still meets the intent of the program. It just didn't go as long-term as we had hoped.
Thank you.
Alexia, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How many organizations would you say in the state of Utah are actually working with you on an apprenticeship program? And what type of organizations are they?
Okay, and I'll speak a little bit to this and I'll let Pat elaborate, because most of the data we have right now is on programs that are registered through the Department of Labor, right? If they're not registered, there's nobody necessarily keeping track of it, but we do have 234 programs statewide, and those can be, we have what we call sponsors. So it could be, it's primarily individual companies, but we also see some associations, some educational providers that may sponsor apprenticeships as well. And they're ranging. I mean, still primarily in Utah, we're seeing construction, but Pat can speak to this better than me. She's registering programs all the time now that are outside of that industry. We're working really hard again in the IT, healthcare space, manufacturing. So I think you're going to start to see those numbers. In fact, even over the last year, we've seen the construction percentage start to decrease a little bit as we're getting more diversity in the types of industries that are using them.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe what I'll do is transition over to Pat, because I think she's going to fill in a lot of the gaps that I have left out, and then we can see what other questions are left at the end. Pat, go ahead.
Hey, everybody. I'm Pat Miller. I'm the State Director for Utah. I work with the Office of Apprenticeship, the Department of Labor. I've been around 16 years, and I have watched our agency transition and morph into a much more diverse agency than has ever been seen before. We started out in 1937 in construction only, working with the unions. And that's how most people, if you say an apprenticeship, that's what they recognize as, oh, an electrician apprentice or a plumber apprentice. But now with the advent of over 1,300 occupations are apprenticeable now. I counted them up this morning while I was waiting. We have over 1,300 different occupations. And we do everything from biochemical to IT to medical to, I mean, we have got research here in Utah. We've got a research company, we've got a plastic surgeon, we've got a dentist, we've got a medical clinic, we've got IT coming all over the place, especially with COVID and what's going on. A lot of IT companies are looking at us as a plausible way to enhance their working staff because they're being called on more and more with all the different platforms with Google and Zoom and Microsoft Teams and, oh my gosh, all the different video things I had to learn. My brain spun for like 90 days before I figured out how to tag into everything. We started out calling it an earn while you learn concept. Alexia went through everything. It's a paid job. It's got OJT. It's got related technical instruction, whether that's a brick and mortar class, correspondence, or an online class. It has learning from a mentor and getting credit, getting paid as you hit benchmarks and become more valuable to the employer. You are paid what you are worth. So you get reimbursed in here as well as in here as you move through an apprenticeship. And the nice thing is the best part of my day is doing the certificates for the people who are graduating. This year so far, we have almost 500 graduated apprentices, and we are only in August. We go till the end of September. But we have over 500 people who have gotten the credentials that prove that they are a journey worker status in that occupation for that company. Alexia told you we have 234 sponsors currently signed up. That's an amazing amount considering where the population is. And we have registered apprenticeships in every single one of our communities. We've got them in St. George, we've got them in Moab, we've got them in Price and Vernal. I mean, the outlying areas are taking advantage of the apprenticeship program. We have a whole bundle along the Wasatch Front and up in Logan and over in Tremont. So registered apprenticeship touches the whole state, not just the most populated areas. One of the cool things we do is if you sign up as a sponsor, we look at who your journeymen are, journey workers are in the occupation you're signing up. We ask you to sign them up as well if they haven't gotten their credentials, so that everybody gets credit for knowing what they know, because rewarding your journey people first makes them much more eager and willing to teach the next version of those workers coming into your company. It makes for a much more cohesive workforce. There's no, it makes, the military calls it MWR, morale welfare. And so it makes it so that there's a cohesive force within your company to make your company better. We have 3 different types of apprenticeships. We have a time-based apprenticeship, which has a more basic time-honored plan. You have so many hours of on-the-job training required and so many hours of the schooling and the technical required. We also have competency-based, which most companies recognize it as open entry, open exit. You can move as fast as your brain and your capability allows you to move through that apprenticeship. Alexia said that most of our apprenticeships are 1 year long. They are at least 1 year. That's the on-the-job training. That's not necessarily the schooling. With our CNA programs, we have CNA, it has 6 different components. And you can customize those components depending upon your organization. A care center is going to have different components than a hospital or a clinic for a CNA, so that you can pick and choose out of those 6 components. And each one is about 90 days long. So you can pick and choose and create the components that fit what your company does. And then we have what we call a hybrid. And that is a kind of merging of the time and the competency, so that there is a window that is required. You have to train your people to within the window. It's usually a 10% from the lowest to the highest window down from a time frame. And that's very confusing, but trust me, it works really well. And a lot of our time occupations are moving to the hybrid, because they want, if the right person steps into the right company at the right time and they've got the right mindset, they want to be able to complete them a little quicker. And the hybrid allows that opportunity. The other thing is, if for some reason that apprentice decides that they want to move to a different company or a different state, our registered apprenticeship is recognized in all 50 states, Commonwealths, Canada, and Mexico, and several places in Europe. They can take our credentials and move to another place and get credit immediately, reciprocity for that certificate. And if they leave before they finish an apprenticeship, but they want to move to another place in that same occupation, they can take that credit and go to work for another company that is a sponsor or is willing to become a sponsor, and they can carry that credit with them so they don't start from step 1. Education options. Oh boy, is that not a large topic with right now. We have brick and mortar. We have correspondence courses. We have online classes, and also in some instances, Jiffy Lube, for instance, they have their own online course that they require their people to work through, and we recognize that education. So if you are a company and you have your own specialized education and training program, you simply have to share that program with us. We look at it. If we feel that it needs to be fleshed out a little bit, we'll talk to you about it. But 8 out of 10 times, we will recognize your training program. And Alexia talked about all the grant money with her grant, with WIOA, with the Weber grant, with SUU. These are amazing places where you can tap into funds to help you and your employees to work through apprenticeships and become highly valuable members of your community. Because people who work through apprenticeships most often live a higher standard of living than those who don't. And most people don't recognize that they're working through apprenticeships, whether it's recognized or not. If you've served in the military, you've been through an apprenticeship. If you've gone to work for any of the larger companies, the utilities, they are all apprenticeships. And so apprenticeship is out there. It's been out there forever. It just comes under different colors and flavors. Registered apprenticeship is straightforward, easygoing, easy to understand. The newest thing that we're doing right now, Alexia tapped into that a little bit, was talking about intermediaries, having schools sign up as the sponsor, and then companies sign on underneath the standards of that educational institution to be part of a registered apprenticeship program. For instance, we recently signed Bottega, which is a computer school, as an intermediary. They currently have 4 companies that signed up underneath their umbrella, which means they are following the standards that Bottega and I worked out and set up. So they didn't have to do any of the setup. They just say, okay, yes, the standards look good. We like this program. We're going to sign up. So they didn't have to do the work with me. They just simply agreed to a set of standards that was already established. We call that intermediary. We're currently working with Weber and Davis Technical College and SUU to sign up as intermediaries. And now that I have supercharged, pumped all this into your brain, and you're shaking your head trying to make it all make sense, I'm going to shut up, and if you have questions, please ask me.
Pat, I've got a lot of questions for you.
Okay, you've got my, Alexia put my information up there, miller.patsy@dol.gov. Send me an email. My telephone number is 801-425-2211. And give me a call. I will go ahead and ask your questions.
So is it a correct assumption then that funding goes directly to the organization, not the individual?
That's an Alexia question, but that's good. So the way our funds for the grants, if it's an OJ, if it's the on-the-job training funds, while the individual has to be eligible, the funds actually will come directly to you as the employer for the reimbursement. For training costs, tuition, supplies, tuition always goes directly to the training provider, and supplies and other things like that are generally issued to the individual, and they're required to provide us with receipts.
Okay. All right. So there's kind of a 3-tiered approach then to funding. There's an education component that goes to the educator or the education system. The pay goes to the employer, and supplies go to the individual.
Beautiful. Yes.
All right.
I'll use that next time. I like it.
Yeah, we're going to steal that one.
So must the organization be registered in order to receive funding for pay that they're providing to their employee?
Currently, for the grants that we have right now, yes, they're all for registered programs.
Is there a maximum amount that can be paid?
Yeah, currently, and I can't speak for the Weber State or Southern Utah grants, but for our grant, right now the maximum is $4,000. So the employer can get up to $4,000 for OJT, and then for the training costs and other supplies, that's a separate $4,000. And then we just kind of have to monitor that over the life of our grant. We still have 2 full years left on our grant. So if funding becomes tight, we may have to change that, but right now that's where we're at.
And the last question is where are you focusing your attention and time now in trying to recruit organizations to offer apprenticeships? Where do you see the greatest need?
Well, I could tell you for our grant, the industries that we targeted, we did target construction because in Utah, that is still a lot of need, a lot of demand. That's still holding strong. We also targeted advanced manufacturing, IT, and healthcare, but those were just our targets. So we're still trying to, get included, in forums like this where we can outreach to all industries, not just specific industries, but a lot of our intentional targeting right now is in those four industries.
Great. I think you have some individuals here on this call actually that can be of great help to you. And in particular with manufacturing and some of those areas, not only organizations that may want to participate as an apprenticeship, but those who are working hard. I know Forrest Fackrell's on this call. They provide a lot of assistance to these organizations. They might be great partners for you.
Great.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you. And I have several questions too. I'll save them for some offline discussion. Pat, I see that you're not very enthusiastic about what you're talking about.
Yeah, this job is just so hard. I have to force myself to go to
You're
work.
just bored, aren't you?
Yeah, no. No.
No, this is great. Thank you and Alexia both. That's super information.
Great.
Alexia and Pat, I don't know if you've reached out to our local SHRM organizations. I know we've got Miles and Allison and other people in this group that are part of that. I think this would be a good discussion for us. What do you think, Miles?
We're totally open to, a presentation on it. We'd love to get in front of our employer groups and let them know about it, share some info with them. I know we're booked up, I think, towards the end of this year, but beginning of next year, January, February, I think we might have some openings.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
So it's interesting. I was in a discussion a couple of days ago and we were just, the manufacturers that I was speaking with were just clamoring for this kind of a program. And I wasn't aware that it existed. So this, Chuck, you're right. This is invaluable information to me. So thank you very much. We'll definitely be connecting later. I've been emailing Vicki Fenton back and forth too.
Yeah.
I understand she's tied in with your group. So that would be very helpful. Wonderful.
Great. Yeah. And, I think it's important just to mention, there's no need to feel overwhelmed or feel like you have to go get it all figured out on your own. That's part of what Pat and I do. We're here to support you in kind of figuring out some of those things. So if you're feeling like, I don't even know where to start, don't stay in that space, reach out and we're happy to help you.
Well, and one thing I'd tell you is my agency and registered apprenticeship, any work you do with me, there is no cost. To sign up for registered apprenticeship, it's totally free. And I tell everybody that when you are a cheerleader for something this good, it sells itself. And there's no harm in trying it. If you find that it doesn't fit down the road, all you do is call me and say, Pat, I've decided that this isn't what I want to do. And I've had calls from companies that feel that way. They've, for whatever reason, have decided that registered apprenticeship just doesn't quite fit what they want. And it's not for everybody, unless you ask me. I think it's for everybody. But in all honesty, it does not fit what everybody wants. But there is no harm in trying it. And everything that I just like threw at you at warp speed, I tend to get going, and I believe so hard in what we offer. And the fact that there's money out there to help you and your employees give this a shot, that I don't understand why people don't at least give it a try. So you don't have to remember everything that Alexia and I just said, because we know it and we can help you with that. And so you can take it. One of my favorite phrases is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So Alexia and I already know the whole elephant. Between the two of us, we've got it licked. So you don't have to do that. You can take it one piece at a time. Give Alexia a call if you've got questions about funding, because I don't do funding. She does the funding. But if you want to set up a really good training plan, we have boilerplates, like I said, for over 1,300 occupations. And several of those are different flavors within a different occupation. For manufacturing alone, I have 14 different boilerplates. And there are more being created all the time. If there's not something that fits what you want, let's create it. I've done that 14 times, created occupational training plans with companies so that you get what you want. And there's no harm in trying. Please give us a call, ask your questions, ask them here, or if you prefer, please contact us and give it a shot.
Pat and Alexia, outside of having forums like this through the Chamber of Commerce, what else can the Chamber do to help you?
Gosh, I think, just really just spread the word as you're interacting with other employers, or, it just like, we were just mentioning, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know we had this in the state. Now that you guys are kind of hearing about it, if in your conversations it comes up, please connect people to us. I think, we can, and we can continue that conversation with them. Also, if in your personal world you have individuals that are interested in pursuing apprenticeships, they can also just apply to be part of this grant, and they will work with an employment counselor that will help them find an employer that's looking to hire apprentices in whatever occupation they're interested in.
Right.
Thank you.
I have one question. So, Pat, how long does it take for a company to develop a registered apprenticeship program?
Oh, I love that question. Thank you.
This sounds easy, but I'm thinking it's kind of difficult.
No.
Okay.
The employer, if you have an occupation that has a boilerplate that does not need a lot of updating, I have had companies sign up in 48 hours.
Wow.
Because the process, in all honesty, is employer driven. Because you call me or contact me, I have a little sheet that has all the information I need, and I ask lots of questions. And once that phone call is done, which usually takes, in all honesty, about half an hour, 45 minutes, I do all of the compilation. I put all the information into the documents we have. I will send the training plan to the employer, and however fast they get it done and back to me drives how fast. I've had some that I've been working on for 2 years because the employer gets busy and we are not the top priority. And I believe that what I have is such a good thing. I don't pressure anyone. I am not a pressure salesperson at all. I will give you a call every month and say, hi, just checking in. Are you still interested? And they email me back saying yes, no, or yeah, but I got to get this done first. And I go, okay. And then I put on my calendar to contact them in a month. But I have signed companies up as quickly as 48 hours. So it's totally employer driven. Once we get out all the stuff ironed out, it's a matter of 24 to 48 hours to get it approved.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Pat. Are there any other questions from the committee? Well, Lisa will send out the presentation